types of things. Even within the top 15, top 20 crypto space in ETC. And so I think it'd be really, really difficult for even some of these guys who have looked at the space to really tell you the key differentials and kind of the value proposition differences between the two tokens, or between this and Litecoin or Ripple. There's like things that have absolutely nothing to do with one another, but I think people still have a hard time differentiating. But I do think that comes with time. Investors certainly were still getting familiar with Bitcoin, 12, 24 months ago, are now starting to look at the other ones. And I think as the education, as they kind of go up the education curve, I do think you'll see the differentiation between these tokens. But I think there's a lot that the education community can do to kind of hasten and further that education effort.
By the way, when we say ETC, isn't the light supposed to be flashing?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
What's
the sun saying?
So Anthony tweeted out the blockchain address for ETC cooperative donations, so make sure you're making the light go off.
Oh, it's doing it. I'm not just saying it.
Yeah.
Minor correction, it's actually the ETC Community Fund. It's run by several people in the community and not the cooperative.
Great.
But it's great.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying.
I want to comment on that. I go back to the first point, is you got to focus on development and on-chain activity and giving users and developers a chance to imagine what they can actually build on the protocol. We can't get worried about will the CME at a ETC that will just happen as a result of any of these assets truly taking off. So in this space, the smart money isn't the institutionals, because they didn't come into the space until 2017, right? The smart money is in the technical, philosophical, people who want to build a complete different planet. So by the same token, no pun there, but you're not here kind of there's so much room for imagination. You're not really competing with even Ethereum or any of these coins. You just have to build a community that is very open, has a certain kind of standard that's focused on development. And again, the same way the OTC volumes are tracking the market cap, the usage, to combine everyone's points, the usage grows the market cap loss curve, and then that will lead to these products being built. So that's what we focus on.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that I think Ethereum Classic's actually done really well in this crypto bear market. If you look at tokens year to date, only 3 have had an increase in active users. It's Stellar, Lumen, EOS, and Dogecoin. And I'm not sure why Dogecoin's up. But Ethereum Classic's pretty much flat, and it's been one of the better performing platforms. So I think that's great news. And again, I think the utility and creating a strong community is important. And I kind of see here, I think the miners cooperate with developers, and I think that there's, the right amount of attention, but solution finding. I also think it's probably good that there is no on-ramps besides traditional exchanges. I think when futures were introduced on BitMEX for Ethereum, it really created a lot of selling pressure. And in fact, we published a piece, I think if you look at the last 6 tokens that had perpetual swaps added, they fell an average of 47% in the first month. So it's probably good to just do an OTC. Call these guys.
So I absolutely hate when I get asked to make short-term price predictions. So I won't ask you guys to give me your 12-month price target on anything. But as you look out into the future, maybe 5 to 10 years at the investment opportunity associated with this asset class, what do you think the best way to play that is? Is it betting on some of those longer tail coins? Is it allocating to a diversified mix of crypto assets? How do you guys recommend that people play this opportunity?
I think in traditional finance, you have this dollar cost averaging strategy. And the fun thing about this stuff is you can actually use it. So if you try and move more of your life into the crypto ecosystem, then I think you'll naturally have both the dollar cost averaging. People who take their paychecks in crypto, I think those things are going to happen more and more often, and that's kind of again, focus on the utility. So I think in some ways, this market correction has shown that a lot of the hype about last year were kind of maybe misplaced in the wrong areas. And the reason that the market takes a long time to adjust is people actually have a lot of funding. They still are using some of their runways to continue, but maybe those ideas aren't very good. And we need to kind of cleanse the ecosystem of ideas that are on its way to failing to inject new ideas. And then the best example I can give is, you look at the 2013 narrative of like, let's go get Amazon to accept Bitcoin, and that would equal price goes up like 5x. And let's make a Bitcoin ETF, which would help drive the Bitcoin price from 300 to 600. This is a limited imagination that people had at the time about what could you do, because people kind of looked at crypto as a completely different thing and wanted to kind of bring it back into the blockchain, into the real economy, and let's make private blockchains and things like this. And you have to kind of get rid of that train of thought. And the thing that you should have been focusing on at the time was, for example, like smart contract applications. Things that are even more abstract than so Bitcoin was at the time. I think what will drive this whole market up the next 10x will be something along those curves, not things that are really part of the narrative from the past year or so.
Tom, anything to add? Or different from you, perhaps?
Well, I think FANG, for those who don't know what FANG is, it's an acronym for Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, or in China they call it BATS, for Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, I think China. If you bought FANG 15 years ago, you would have taken $200,000 into $1.6 million. In fact, you didn't have to own anything in the stock market since the last 15 years was at FANG. And before FANG, in the 80s, all you had to own were consumer stocks like Gap, Home Depot, which actually rose 1,200%. So $1,000 turned to $1.2 million. I think the next FANG is crypto. So I think you need to just buy the quality projects, and $1,000 will turn into, I think it's how it's right. It's probably be more than $1,000. So.
Great. Well, I want to, with that, I think we're running out of time, but I want to thank the panelists for sharing their very unique perspectives. And yeah, we'll open it up to audience questions if anyone has them. There.
I think the three of you guys have the highest level and I think the most engaged conversations of anybody in the world with institutional investors. What are they saying in these meetings quietly to you? What are they thinking? How do they view what's been happening with the price and what's really happening behind the scenes?
I think what's been really encouraging for me personally is even throughout the bear market, the projects, the announcements, things that the biggest financial institutions in the world have been working on now haven't been postponed. They're still being planned. They're still going full strong. And so my sense is if they really thought this was sort of a fly-by-night type of opportunity, then I think the price decline would have put a whole lot more projects on hold, or just entirely kind of cancel altogether. But it's the exact reverse is kind of happening. I feel like banks and some of the hedge funds are still growing their blockchain teams, their crypto teams. More and more you hear about traditional financial players kind of getting involved. And so from a service provider's perspective, guys are trying to create the roads, bridges, and tunnels. The crypto space are still going strong. So that's, for me, certainly a sign that this is a longer-term asset. And if they agree with our view, that certainly this is going away. But the hedge fund guys, the biggest ones in the world, why they haven't kind of invested, my full view still has to do with custody. And that's not with because the existing custodians aren't good enough. I don't think that's it. I don't think it's a tech question. I think it's a credit question. They need the brand name, the Fidelities, the State Streets, the BNY Mellons to kind of get involved. Not because they can build better tech. I don't really think that. But because there's kind of the brand name associated with each custodian, and that they wouldn't be faulted within their companies for picking State Street as their custodian, one. And two, in the event of a hack, would they have the balance sheet to make me whole? Whereas some of the crypto startups wouldn't have that. So it's a conversations around insurance. It's a conversation around, it's a CYA type of thing. As it results in picking out which custodian. But the moment one of these guys are really kind of involved, and we hear rumors every single day, I think you really kind of start to see the movement kind of coming from the institutional guys.
On a general level, I think I agree with you, for sure. And then I would just add some highlights. I used to read Barry's tweets about what his meetings were about institutional investing in 2014-15. I think the attitude change has been the biggest effect. So previously, the startups were begging to get a meeting with the institutions. And now, think about there's 2,000 banks in the world, but how many OTC desks are there, or how many crypto exchanges are there? And so they've really kind of embraced that these institutions have a lockdown and massive sort of market share in the traditional financial world, but they've kind of accepted that they are a relatively late or fringe adopter into this space, and they're really looking to learn really humbly about how they can get involved. And previously, these institutions would say they would never have capital on these kind of exchanges that don't meet the kind of the grade, but now they're going to kind of explore. And the employees of these institutions, when they can't directly access fast enough, they tell you privately, like, hey, I have a lot of this stuff in my own PA, but I just can't do it as part of the institution. And those institutions that are not as abrasive of this technology, they are finding that, sometimes I go to a meeting and 6 months later, these guys have set up their own shop outside of the institutions, where sort of talent, even at these institutions, can flow. So the ones that have thought smartly about it are taking a different approach. They're redoing the entities and doing things that allows them to access this space at the kind of speed that the retail investors are accessing. So that's been refreshing.
Jack, how would you compare the perspective of the institutional investors in Asia as compared to, let's call it, the US or Europe?
Yeah, I think the setup always in Asia was more flexible because there was no 100-year bank, 200-year bank type of deal. And people always look to Asia, even the global funds, as an emerging market play or like a strategy where they were already investing a whole bunch of esoteric things. And so those funds are sort of much more nimble, and they don't have as much sort of restrictions on what they can do, and that's helped them because they were able to enter the space a little bit earlier in the maybe 2016, 2017 phase, so they can sort of still be positive on the year or on their fund, and that's helpful. And the entrepreneurs are able to be more nimble with these institutions as well in the space, so they've kind of had a much more open dialogue over the years. I think the companies in the U.S. In Europe are a little bit more traditional, like the startup companies in the space, whether they're merchant adoption or an exchange. You've seen a much more dynamic business model going on in Asia, and that's kind of, again, giving people more imagination on what they're really investing in.
If I could just add a little bit, I don't want to sort of beat the point too much, but our business, 80% is still primarily institutional traditional markets. And I kind of view that institutional market is really two. There's a macro world where people trade correlation, and then there's sector funds, which buy sectors and make stock bets. The macro world, I think, is pretty interesting in Bitcoin because it is uncorrelated. But as these guys mentioned, custody is an issue, and that's why I think backed is really going to be pretty attractive and not these necessarily cash settled futures, and that's why Goldman didn't have much business. But a much bigger pool of money is sitting with sector funds, and whether it's a pension fund or a Tiger Cub, And that's really where most of the money is. You have to remember, these guys make all their money just buying FANG. I mean, they all got rich, being long FANG, $1,000 turned into 1.5 million. Crypto to them, it sounds like the worst idea, because one, it's their neighbor who was unemployed that just made $1 million on crypto, or the guy they fired turned out to get really rich, and so they kind of resent crypto because it seems like it's not their kind of alpha. They didn't discover it, and it's not their idea. But the reason we're getting a lot more interest from them, and we do a lot more teach-ins, is that they're finding that every analyst they hire from college is pretty active and interested in crypto, so they want to understand why these young people like it so much. So.
Do you have time for any other questions? Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
All right.
Well, with that, I just want to thank our panelists for sharing their perspective, and let's give them a big round of applause.